Welcome to the Royals Rundown podcast presented by Royals Review. I am Jake Milham, joined as always by Jeremy Greco. Jeremy, how are we doing this lovely Sunday?
Well, I'm a little bummed, Jacob. I thought
Why?
that, maybe I had a write-in campaign to become an all-star this year, but,
Not happening.
it looks like I fell a few votes short.
I don't know if that's an option, Jeremy. I don't think you can just write in anyone. Okay, you're gonna have like shoeless.
I mean,
Joe
it's
Jackson
it's
or
just a
something.
text box.
Fair. All right, folks, we have a big episode for you. We got to wrap up the Rockies series. We got to talk about the draft. We got to talk about the All-Star, a whole bunch of stuff going on. But first, before we get into it, you need to go check out royalsreview.com.
What is happening?
I don't know. Hold on. My God, it's Greg Walker. It's Greg Walker. Let's go. Greg, how we doing, man?
Turning up out here. Yeah, it's been a little bit too long since everybody has had the privilege of hearing my voice on this podcast. What is going on?
Hell yeah. Hey, if y'all are unaware for some reason, this is Greg Walker. So I will admit a shortcoming. I pushed him off the podcast in the off season, and I didn't even mean to. I was like, well, he said there's not a whole lot to talk about, and he ain't wrong. So Jeremy and I will just handle it. And we're like 90 games into the season, and it's like, shit, Greg.
Yeah, I was beginning to think that I was banned because of the book that I'd reviewed.
Hell no. If we are nothing around here, we love a good lightning rod, Greg. Okay, Jeremy can attest to that a little bit. So thank you so much for joining us, Greg. But just like I was saying, we're going to talk to Greg a lot more about the MLB Draft, plus run through the All-Star roster and stuff like that. But first, the folks that make this happen, the place where these two write at is at royalsreview.com. You go there, check out the game threads, game recaps. Rumblings have been popping off with the Royals actually being relevant on the Major League Baseball level, so that has been good. Go check all those things out. Be a more informed Royals fan over at royalsreview.com. So, guys, we are coming to the podcast about an hour after the final pitch in the Colorado Rockies series. This would have been a very different episode if we recorded this Saturday night. Because, man, I was pissed after Saturday's loss. Greg, I do want to ask you, heading into Sunday's game, how were you feeling about the Royals' performance against the Rockies?
Not great, because anytime that your team is heading out to Coors Field against especially the pitching staff of the 2024 Rockies in particular, you're expecting to put up some runs, and that just wasn't happening over those first few games, because we've just seen that so many times this year with this team where, they'll go a week where it's like, oh my goodness, this offense might be turning a corner, and they'll go another week and score 2 runs or 1 run in every single game, and it feels like there's only 2 actual hitters in the lineup. And so it's just weird how up and down it is, because, after the offense was completely absent the first 2 games, they come out with 10 runs today, no problem. I mean, part of that was kind of taking their cuts against the Rockies bullpen, on the last day of a 3-game series. So that obviously that plays into it for sure. But yeah, it's a continuation, I feel like, of just this entire season of how up and down the offense has been. But tell you what, when your rotation is pitching the way that Kansas City's has been this year, that keeps you in a lot of games.
It really does. And Jeremy, looking back on this whole series, if you look out and you look at the 3-game set, not the wins and losses, it's like, okay, we had 3 amazing starts from the Royals. Yep. I think over the entire series, they outscored the Rockies 13-7, which is an amazing run differential, and just shows how potent this Royals lineup is, right, Jeremy? Yeah. No, but how do you feel?
The lineup can be potent when it's working, and I cannot. I feel like I would be remiss if I did not point out that Michael Garcia was in the lineup batting 8th today. I've been advocating for him to stop leading off. I know I'm not even close to the only one, but I've been one of the people saying, gosh, quit it. Knock it off. He bats 8th today. He gets 2 hits, including a 3-run home run and a walk.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'll play. I don't remember what Adam Frazier did leading off, but Hunter Renfroe came in as a defensive replacement and took a walk. I'm like, please, can Hunter Renfroe lead off? I really think that might be the answer, at least in the short term. He's making just really good plate appearances out there, and has been for almost 2 months now. So, and as you said, the starters were fantastic. I think if you told me that every starter was going to go at least 6 innings and none of them were going to give up more than 2 earned runs, I would have thought that we would have a chance at a sweep in this series. And obviously, that's not what happened. But with the win on Sunday, you can look back at the first 2 games and see the positives that were there. The offense was missing, but the rest of it was present.
Greg, how are you feeling after the series as a whole? Because me personally, I don't know if Sunday's win changes too much for me positively. It just doesn't like crater my outlook on the 2024 Royals. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, it's encouraging that it feels like, over the past few years with the Royals, what they would have done on Sunday is come out completely flat and end up getting swept. And so it does feel at least a little bit different with this team. They can actually find a way to finally put some offense together to at least salvage the last game, because obviously it's disappointing to lose a series when you're playing against a team like the 2024 Rockies, but to at least get one game out of it is pretty encouraging. So, I mean, I don't really have any larger takeaways at all, but I'm glad they're at least getting one win here to start out the road trip, because it is going to get a bit tougher here for the next week.
Yeah, that it is. So the Royals schedule right now is dwindling down. We're heading into the All-Star break. The All-Star rosters were just announced this evening. Only 5 games over the next 11 days for the Royals, which, Jeremy, I think I made a joke last week about like, oh, I'm so glad the Royals have a day off. Well, that day off rolled around and I didn't know what to do with myself in the evening. So it's going to be a little weird as a Royals fan, but it's hard to say anything against these players. Need some rest. They're kind of limping into the All-Star break right now. All that time off is going to be good, and they have time off in between their next 2 series. So they have a 2-game set against the St. Louis Cardinals. They have Monday off ahead of that, and then ahead of heading out to Fenway, they have a day off, which that Fenway series is going to be very, very important. Royals still, as of this recording, a game and a half back of the Boston Red Sox for that 3rd wild card spot. So that's really going to affect how the postseason standings are looking heading into the second half of the season.
And that's important as well. They can catch them, but they need to win to have that tiebreaker in position.
Correct. And they have the tiebreaker over fellow AL East opponent, the Tampa Bay Rays, thankfully. But how that goes against the Red Sox is gonna say a lot. Greg, any thoughts on those final 2 series?
I mean, I'm pretty looking forward to that series next weekend, because that's going to be a showdown of 2 starting rotations that have been way better this season than I expected in the preseason, because I kind of mentioned with Kansas City earlier. But over with the Red Sox, I mean, Tanner Houck has had an amazing season for them. Or Cutter Crawford has been a really good option as well. And so, I was really concerned about that starting rotation coming into the season. They've turned out to be way better than I thought. And so that should be a fun little matchup there in Fenway.
Yeah, that starting rotation has kept them. It's kind of similar to the Royals. It has kept them relevant across the entire series, even a lot of peaks and valleys from that lineup. And the Royals are facing off against 2 teams that about a month ago I thought were going to be sellers. They're facing off against the Cardinals and the Red Sox. I always like the I-70 series personally. I think it's the closest thing that the Royals have to a rivalry. It is you can dislike another team, but to have a rivalry, you have to be kind of competitive and steal a few games. Well, the Royals have been fairly competitive in St. Louis against the Cardinals, which is always good. So I'm looking forward to those games. If you want to, there'll be a series preview up on RoyalsReview.com if you want to get informed on who you should be looking out against for the Cardinals and why the Royals can beat the Cardinals. Jeremy, I know you got it pulled up right now, so why don't you give us the lowdown? Which Royals are heading down to Arlington for the All-Star game?
So a couple weeks ago, I predicted 3 players would make it from the Royals. And I am glad to say those 3 players are going. Seth Lugo,
Woo-hoo.
Salvador Perez, Bobby Witt Jr., all announced as all-star reserves because pitchers can't be starters. They're all reserves. But it doesn't stop there. Cole Reagans also making his first all-star appearance. That is, of course, the first all-star appearance for Bobby Witt Jr., the first all-star appearance for Seth Lugo, and the 9th all-star appearance for catcher Salvador Perez. So, for Royal All-Stars last year, they had, I believe, just the one, just Salvador Perez, if I'm remembering that correctly. I don't remember how long it's been since they had multiple Royals, but I do remember as a kid the year that Mike Sweeney and Jermaine Dye both went to the All-Star game for the Royals, and that was the first and last time the Royals sent multiple All-Stars for over the course of like 15 years of my early Royals fandom. So to just be like, hey, we've got 4 guys going to the All-Star game this year, that feels pretty good to the childhood fan that still lives inside of me.
Yeah, Greg, it's so according to Royals insider Josh Vernier, this is the 7th time in franchise history the Royals are sending 4 All-Stars to the All-Star game. It happened in 72, 76, 78, 82, and then, of course, in 15 and 16. Greg, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they really missed on any other Royals. Like, it seems like they were fairly generous with Royals in the All-Star game.
No, if I were to have to pick out which 4 of the Royals would be most likely to make the All-Star game, it would have been exactly those 4, because obviously Bobby Witt Jr. he's falling behind the Aaron Judges and Gunnar Hendersons of the world in the MVP race, but he's still, without a doubt, one of the best players we have in the league right now. Salvador Perez, very deserving as kind of the second catcher behind Adley Rutschman in the American League. That totally checks. Cole Reagans Lugo, obviously. Cole Reagans having an outstanding season, maybe even better based on the peripherals and his ERA indicates. And Seth Lugo, I mean, the season ended today. Seth Lugo would win the American League Cy Young. Like, he's leading the league in innings pitched and in ERA. If you do that, you're going to win the Cy Young. I mean, Robbie Ray did it in 2021. That's just how it works. So, like,
how could anybody else be the Cy Young Award winner when that guy threw the most innings and gave up the fewest runs?
Yeah, exactly. Like, voters have gotten somewhat more analytical, but, like, if you lead the league in ERA and innings, you're winning the Cy Young. And so right now, Seth Lugo is on that exact pace, and so it's good that he's getting rewarded for that performance.
And I will say this is just my opinion. Seth Lugo looks like a Cy Young Award winner. Like, if you're writing about baseball back in like the 60s and 70s, it looks like you just plucked Seth Lugo out of that era in baseball and tossed him in 2024. Like, he just a great throwback pitcher, and so glad that he is getting the recognition he deserves, and another breakout stellar season from him. Hopefully it is the first of many in a Royals uniform. I put that little asterisk on there. Now, as of right now, we don't know if he's starting the All-Star game for the American League. I think that he has to be the favorite to do so, but we never know. Maybe they go Garrett Crochet or Tariq Skubal instead of Seth Lugo, but we're not here to mince words about that.
The good news is that the way the schedule is lining up, Seth Lugo will pitch Saturday. So he should be available to pitch in the All-Star game. Cole Reagans, I believe, will pitch Friday. So he would also be available. And so we should have, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly, we're going to get Waka against his old team on Tuesday. We'll get Marsh on Wednesday, and then, as I said, Reagan's Friday, Lugo Saturday, and Singer Sunday, a repeat of this week because of the 5 games in the 7-day span there.
Yeah, good old Alec Marsh is going to be facing off against Sonny Gray of the Cardinals. So
hopefully we get the good Alec Marsh then.
Hopefully so. Only one way to find out, sadly. Greg, any other thoughts on this all-star roster? Like, I'm not seeing any immediate snubs. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 that I'm missing out there, but I'm not seeing any egregious ones, I guess is the word.
No, I don't tend to have strong takes on all-star selections because, like, obviously a large part of it is a popularity contest, but also I think it's a weird accolade in general. Like, if people are trying to, for example, break down somebody's Hall of Fame candidacy and be like, well, he was a 9-time All-Star. I'm like, okay, but that's a first half award, right? Where's my second half award? Why don't I have anything for that? So I don't have any strong takes on that. If I do have a strong take, it's not It's not about the actual rosters. It's about the uniforms. And I know I'm not the only person that has this. Has anybody ever said, man, I'm glad they have special All-Star Game uniforms now instead of just them wearing their own team's uniforms? Has anybody ever had that take?
No, one of the coolest things was seeing all the different uniforms on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So this year's uniforms, they suck because they always do. They should just be wearing their own uniforms.
Yeah.
I have a take, though, I would like to share. Not about the Royals, but about some of the guys who were included this year that I'm excited to see. We talked about this a little bit ahead of time, but Matt Strom, former Royal, making his All-Star debut this year with his sub-2 ERA for the Phillies, and some other guys that I really like. Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens drafted last year in the All-Star game this year. We talk about Brandon Finnegan getting drafted in 2014 and then pitching in September for that big league team. Paul Skeens is an all-star after being drafted the year before. Just absolutely insane. Should be awesome. Also, Ellie De La Cruz, one of my favorite players, one of the most exciting players in MLB, getting his first all-star game. When I look at these rosters, Gunnar Henderson, of course, is a starter. Adley Rutschman is a starter. I love both of those guys. When I look at these rosters, you know what my really big thought is, Jacob?
What's that?
It is a really good year to be an MLB The Show player who's looking forward to all those all-star cards coming out. They're going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, a lot of folks to choose from. One more nugget on the all-star rosters. The Royals, this is just a few teams to name off. They have more all-stars than the Orioles. They have more than the Yankees. And if my math is serving me correctly, they have the same amount of all-stars as the Twins, Tigers, and White Sox combined. So the Royals are putting their foot down on the all-star game, which is very, very good to hear from.
Just as a complete rabbit trail tangent, just real quick.
Yeah.
The Royals are third in the division, not in the wild card as of right this moment, but still tied for fifth in the AL in simple rating system, ahead of the Twins and the Red Sox. So just throwing that out there that the season's not over yet.
Greg, well, let's go down this rabbit trail a little bit further, because I was thinking something similar when we were taking a step back and looking at the Rocky series. So we talk about these expected wins, losses, Greg, and a lot of them come down to run differential. And if you're lucky, unlucky, things like that. Like, all in all, the Royals had a +6 run differential on the weekend. Like, that's pretty good. Does that give you hope personally, like seeing that some of the analytics are saying Royals are getting unlucky, or they just need to hit a stride?
I mean, yes and no. It's weird because it does feel like this team is on the right side of blowouts, like relatively often, and that might inflate the run differential.
The numbers back that up, by the way.
Right, and like that might inflate the run differential a little bit. I just have concerns about the lineup depth, and I think that's a reason why it seems like there's go weeks at a time where they can't buy a run, and they go a week where the runs seem to come easy, is because there's just not that many hitters that are actually stepping up. It's kind of amazing that, in my opinion, they've scored as many runs as they have, given that, Bobby Witt's been awesome. Salvi, he's been hot and cold, but he's on the most part been good. Michael Massey is healthy as hit. Freddie Fermin, of course, is like the best backup catcher in baseball, I guess. Yeah. Like, that's just what he's become. Beyond that, though, it's like nobody's actually been a consistent run producer in any meaningful way. And so when you have a lineup that isn't particularly deep, I think you're just going to have hot and cold stretches, especially offensively. So it's like I mentioned earlier, because of the starting pitching, they're going to be in a lot of games they maybe shouldn't necessarily be in. But there's just going to be some cold stretches on offense, and we've kind of seen a little bit of that, especially in June.
Yeah. Jeremy, anything else on that?
It would just kind of expand a little bit and say that when the Royals offense, what has happened to my mind is that Bobby Witt Jr. hits pretty much every day. Vinny Pasquantino hits pretty much every day. Salvador Perez, hot and cold. Maikel Garcia, when he's hot, he's hot. When he's cold, he's cold. And when he's leading off your team and he's cold, he's really killing you, because then all your hot hitters come up and there's nobody on in front of him. So this is why what I really would like to see Q do is to just be really quick with some lineup shuffles. I know one of the things people complained about a lot last year was how much he was shuffling the lineup trying to get something going. I would like him to see him do that a little bit more this year. So you got Bobby batting second, you've got Vinny, Salvi, and I would be willing to move Salvi out of fourth, but it's not going to happen. So fine. Bobby, Vinny, Salvi, Massey. Those are the guys that are locked in. Everybody else shuffle them around to whoever's hot. So right now, Hunter Renfroe's hot. Bat him leadoff. Then MJ Melendez, bat him ninth. Isbell had actually a really good June, so he could move up to eighth. And then Michael Garcia and whoever else, bat sixth, seventh, eighth, somewhere in there. And just keep moving the lineup around, and whoever's hot, group them all together, because that's how you score runs, is when you group all the guys who are hitting together. And the Royals don't have 5-6 guys that are going to consistently hit. So take your 3-4 that are going to consistently hit, and then find the other 2 that are hitting right this second, and make sure that they're lined up so that they're all getting their hits at the same time.
Yeah, Greg, any response?
No, I mean, he kind of nailed it there. I do want to bring up just a quick sort of question here. Who's been more disappointing to you this year between Michael Garcia and Vinny Pasquantino? Because I was all in on the Michael Garcia breakout 2024, and here we sit on July 7th. He has his 70 work plus on the season. So not exactly the offensive breakout I was envisioning. And Vinny Pasquantino has been fine, but like a 106 for him. Like I thought it was just a given that the dude was going to hit, and he's been basically an average hitter as a first base only defender. So I don't know. In your opinion, at least, who's been more disappointing this year?
Mikel, for sure, because the one thing Vinny has done, and this is the thing I want to address in an article or maybe a later podcast, because I think this is too big of a topic to throw in on everything else we have to talk about today. In the past, the analytics people will say there's no such thing as an RBI guy, or having over 100 RBIs doesn't necessarily prove anything. But that to me is about the fact that getting an RBI. To get an RBI, somebody has to be on in front of you, right? It depends on other people getting on base to get your RBI. But the thing that Vinny Pasquantino has done this year is when somebody is on in front of him, he gets them in. And that, to me, he is an RBI guy in a way that I think fits that what people have talked about as being RBI guys. And so the fact that he does drive in those runs, even with the 106 WRC plus, he has the RBIs up over 50. He looks to me like he changes his approach to make sure he gets that guy in. And I think that's borne out in the numbers with the sacrifice flies. He makes sure that he's going to get it in the air and that guy's going to come home, right? So I'm definitely more disappointed in Michael Garcia. I do think that there's a lot of pressure on him leading off that is going to evaporate a little bit as they move him down the lineup. And I still think the breakout could come. I just think we need to leave him at the bottom of the order, in the middle or the bottom of the order, and take the leadoff pressure off of him. And the one thing he's also kind of done pretty well this year is drive runners in. So put some guys on in front of him, give some guys that could get on base, and let him drive them in.
Yeah, that's a good point. To your question, Greg, I would say that Michael Garcia has been more of a disappointment than Vinny. Vinny is not living up to expectations, I will say that, but he is still producing at least at the plate. Michael hasn't been doing that for a while now. He had a great 3-run shot today, depositing a ball in left field close to where that fan interfered with outfielder Dairon Blanco the other day, mind you. But to Jeremy's point, that might be a big thing to boost Garcia. We've talked about previously how he's more of a cerebral. I think that's how you said it, Jeremy. Garcia is very mindset oriented. It's not a process for him. It's not a mechanical process at the plate. It is a lot about where's his head at, where's his soul at, and things like that. And putting him down in the bottom half of the lineup, it may not get him as many plate appearances, but it does take a lot of that pressure off of his shoulders and just allows him to go up there and free swing a little bit, and we saw that today.
And if he's like Vinny in that he maybe changes his approach depending on if there's runners on, if that's a possibility, then putting runners on instead of saying, hey, because one of the things we've seen from him this year is he slaps the ball in the air to right field and he pulls it on the ground to left field. And that smacks of leadoff hitter approach mentality to me of like, yeah, just trying to hit it hard the other way. Okay, well, now you're a run producer, hit it hard in the air and pull it. And I think he has more success when he does that. And the outfield is obviously playing him away. So, yeah, try and pull the ball while they're playing you away. And then if they start playing you to pull, then you can start going back to the opposite field again. I want to see him make some adjustments, and hopefully moving him down in the order gives him an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, he did have a hit in every single Rockies game this series. So that is something at least. Greg, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Although I feel like having a hit in every game in a 3-game series at Coors Field should be the expectation.
24 hours ago, because it wasn't just disappointing, it was embarrassing. I think these aren't even average starters in Coors Field. These are very much below average guys. And I think it was Freeland he's had a good streak of starts, but what's his numbers on the back of the card? Like that's what everyone's is gonna point back to. So yeah, it was their overall output at the plate for the series was disappointing, considering the setting and considering the competition. I'm just glad that they didn't get freaking swept, honestly. They got kind of lucky in that. Jeremy, any other thoughts
Chris
on that?
Bubich, let's not forget that, okay? He averaged 93.9 miles per hour on his fastball. Poor buddy. Got to pop up 2 strikeouts in the 9th inning. The bullpen help may have arrived, though. Gosh darn it, can we please have Walter Pennington back? Can we have...
There's too many lefties, Jeremy. There's too many. About that whole discourse about you can't have too many lefty relievers in the bullpen. I get that it's very much a entrenched way of thinking in baseball. I don't know, if your lefty guys are getting it done, they're getting it done, right?
I mean, I think that is a little bit silly. Yeah, I mean, you talk about having too many lefties. I'm pretty sure the Marlins at points have been running an entire left-handed starting rotation now. Has it worked? I don't know. You can go look at the Marlins record and decide for yourself. But I don't think it's inherently wrong if all of your best arms just happen to be left-handed. And I don't think it's better to go with worse pitchers that just happen to be right-handed, thinking we'll have the platoon advantage more. Because it doesn't matter if you have the platoon advantage if your best right-handed options are like John Schreiber. No disrespect intended, but like it's not like we're swimming in awesome right-handed options.
And you've got to face 3 batters, and the other team pinch hits. We've seen this over and over again with the Royals and with every team this year. And I'm not blaming Q because it's still the right move to make. But he brings in the pitcher to get the platoon advantage, and the other team pinch hits to get the platoon advantage back. And you are stuck now. And so the righties end up facing lefties anyway. And you can't look me in my eyes and tell me that Chris Bubich and Angel Zerpa can't get right-handers out. You can't tell me that Sam Long can't get right-handers out. You could probably convince me that Will Smith can't get right-handers out, but fine, then get rid of Will Smith.
Listen, Jeremy, I don't want to sit here on this podcast and talk about Will Smith's platoon numbers against righties. But yeah, it was Walter Pennington. He had just a great story around his debut, a great setting for it. But what mattered the most is it was great results. He didn't go up there and get absolutely shelled in his hometown Major League Stadium. He got 2 guys out. It just happened to be after John Schreiber gave a couple of runs, so it didn't really matter as much. Greg, any other thoughts on Will Smith's platoon split?
Not on Will Smith, but the nature of being in this business is that sometimes you're going to have takes that age like milk. And that was the case for me because in my, I believe it was 2022 Fall League recap of how all the Royals did there. Walter Pennington was in the Fall League in 2022, and he was just kind of all right. And I was looking at him and his minor league track record and what he did there. It's like, yeah, maybe he could be like a lefty ground ball specialist or something. Maybe he can get a cup of coffee at some point. And he has been way better than just that in his pro career since I said that. So, shout out to Walter Pennington. Yeah, Colorado School of Mines legend, actually. Kind of the rival school to us academically to my alma mater.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
And because we were a Missouri cool. S&T, so also a big engineering school. And so we had a little bit. It wasn't really that deep cut of a rivalry or anything like that, but it's like, oh yeah, there's the other D2 engineering school. Look at them go.
It's a very niche rivalry, but a rivalry, nonetheless. And to your point about takes aging poorly, Greg, I had a similar take about the 2022 Arizona Fall League and Zach Hockey, thinking that he was going to be the next Alec Marsh esque pitcher. Like I thought he was going to have that sort of role, and now he is. I don't even know what league he's pitching in. He's still pitching, just ain't affiliated ball at all.
Well, I was in on Alec Marsh and Walter Pennington, so
Well, all right.
Chris
Not all of
Bubich.
us can be as smart as you, Jeremy. Jeez.
Things aren't certain yet with Chris Bubich. Let's not get ahead of ourselves now.
I'm positive.
I'm going to put us down the rabbit hole here. What do we think is a successful 2024 from Chris Bubich? Like, does he have to push his way back into the rotation? Does he have to push his way into a closer, a high leverage role? Jeremy, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Or do you just want him to stay healthy? Like, would that be good enough?
Stay healthy and pitch well. The role he ends up pitching in is going to depend a lot on everybody else. It's going to be really hard for him to force his way into this rotation unless somebody gets hurt, which we do not want, or Alec Marsh probably at this point. I don't think any of the other four strike me as particularly likely to completely fall apart anymore. But if Alec Marsh fell apart, then Bubich could step into that rotation spot. By the way, Brady Singer, I said last time that his last start, even though the numbers weren't necessarily great, and he ended up taking the loss, I believe, in that one, that he looked really a lot better, and I liked the approach he was making, and he was fantastic today too. So I think I might need to eat my as I'm sitting here. I was in on Bubich, I was in on Pennington, accidentally. I was in on Marsh, but I was out on a Singer. I was out on Singer as late as like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So I might need to eat my words on that one. He looks like a tremendous mid-rotation starter for this team right now.
He really does. Greg, on to you. Like, what are your expectations for Chris Bubich right now?
Just pitch well enough to stay on the Major League roster for the rest of the year and ideally stay healthy along the way. I don't expect him to break into the rotation just because of how well everybody's been pitching. Like, even the weak link, Alec Marsh, has been a perfectly capable fifth starter. And so I have no reason to believe that's going to change. So barring any kind of injury, if he could just step up in some sort of even medium leverage relief role, that's fine by me. Let him take his time working his way back.
Yeah, that still has value, and we've seen what happens when the Royals don't have a guy in that role. Jeremy, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I don't want him to become the closer, first of all, because I still believe in James MacArthur, but second of all, because I think he could have a lot of value in the bullpen as a link guy doing multi-inning appearances to get from the starters to the back end and to take some pressure off. I feel like a lot of the bullpen's struggles have been a result of the offensive struggles where they've had to pitch in much tighter games than they did earlier this year. We saw them with the blowout today, and Angel Zerpa, who struggled lately, went out there and said, okay, let me just get some outs then, and was perfectly fine. But you see him on Thursday night, or Friday night, excuse me, and John Schreiber comes out there and he has got to be perfect because the game is already tied. I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but it was close. So he's got to be perfect. And if we say, hey, you've got a little bit of breathing room, you've got 2, 3, 4 runs. It doesn't have to be 7, 8, 9. You give them 2, 3, 4 runs, I think they're going to be a lot better. And most of the time, the bullpen's been bad. This is something I might want to research for another article. I feel like most of the time the bullpen's been bad is when the Royals are like within 1 run, or they're tied, or they're a couple runs behind. If they're a couple runs or more ahead, I feel like the bullpen's been fine.
Well, and to go back to takes a little bit, that's more the optics of it. If the offense hadn't put them in that position where they had to pitch perfectly,
right?
Then people wouldn't be so down on the bullpen. Yeah.
Weeks of awful defense that was doing no one any favors.
Which I am gonna write about that for Kings of Kaufman this week, because there's a pretty, I don't know if it's a correlation or a coincidence or whatever the hell you want to call it. But I think right now the Royals have like the third most errors in baseball for like a 25 game span. Yeah, I know. They've like been playing very, very sloppy, but it just coincides with their struggles. as of late. So that is something to take note of. Also, another thing to take note of, Brady Singer. This was only the 5th time this season that he has received this is only the 5th time this season he has received 3 or more runs of run support. Like, that is what today was his 18th start, I think it was. Like, the guy just pitches in low scoring affairs apparently, and it's just nice to actually see the lineup come in and back him up.
Yeah, he's not the only one. There was a stat from Josh Vernier yesterday that in the 38 starts made by Reagans and Lugo, who were both, again, all-stars because they've pitched so well. We already talked about Lugo's like a Cy Young candidate. Reagans probably gets some back-end votes if they held the voting today. And the Royals are 20-18 in those starts because of the lack of run support. So it's not just Singer that's been, I guess, Waka and Waka and Marsh are eating up all the offense.
It's almost like when your offense isn't that good, you don't get that many runs of support.
Yeah. So I'm looking at, so this is before today's numbers. So Cole Reagan's run support per 9 innings across his 19 starts, 3.3 runs. That is not good. Lugo is the opposite, apparently, according to run support per 9, 4.9 runs of run support from the Royals.
So maybe we need to break out those Reagans and Lugo numbers and see how that works out. I mean, Lugo does have 11 pitcher wins.
He does.
In his 19 starts. So that's at least 11 of the 20 wins there belong to him.
Right. The second lowest, actually, to Cole Reagan's is Michael Waka at 3.4 run support. So
that's why you got to be careful how you group your stats, everybody.
Yeah. We're not here to push narratives, even though that is what we do all the time. Don't listen to me. All right, speaking of narratives, we got to create a narrative about the Major League Baseball draft. Okay, it's coming up. We got to talk about it. I want to pick Greg's mind about what this crop is looking like right now. Yeah,
Bobby Witt the third.
Greg says that there's like a Paul Skeens-esque guy that they can get in the 19th round. So I'm really excited to hear that.
Yeah,
Greg, go ahead and tell us this magical arm.
This magical arm, Paul Skeens Jr. Yeah, as Jeremy had mentioned, as we know, Paul Skeens is definitely old enough that he could raise a kid that is already graduating high school. So, yeah,
very odd, very strange. I don't want to know the backstory behind that. I just keep it moving.
Yeah, so
that's one story that can remain untold. Let's not do a 30 for 30 on that one, please. Thank you.
Nope, just keep it moving. Greg, so. In all seriousness, how are you feeling about this draft class? I know 2023, the top half was pretty strong, I thought, but I don't feel the same about 2024.
I mean, it's bad. That's my feeling on this draft class, is that it's not that good. I mean, just quoting Keith Law, who knows quite a little bit about prospects, this is the worst draft class he's ever worked on, and is at least the worst since 2016. 2016 was not a good draft. If you want to go back and look at that, shout out to Mickey Moniak, who was the number 1 overall pick that year. Wow. That was really gone well. So,
wow.
It's not a great draft class. Basically, we have a very clear top 10, and then after that, just this big tier 2 of players that could go in the first round or could go on day 2, and who really knows. There's decent talent at the very, very top, but there is very little depth here.
So does that put more pressure on the Royals though to they have to hit on number 6, cannot miss?
So yeah, that's one way to look at it. Another way would be that I think there's very little incentive to do the strategy that a lot of Royals fans absolutely can't stand them doing, of going under slot for their first pick to save money for somebody later on, just because given the lack of depth in the draft class, I just don't know if it really makes sense to do that, because I don't know who exactly you're trying to save money on. Now, granted, it does help that the Royals are going to have a pretty decent amount of early on picks. They have 3 of the top 41 picks, and no other team has 3 of the top 41, because they have that top 6, got shafted by the lottery just a little bit. Yeah, but they have a comp round pick, and then their second round pick is going to be right at the start of that round. They still have the 4th largest bonus pool as well. So I don't know that it necessarily makes sense for them to go under slot, and so I think they're going to go sort of chalk at the top most likely.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just gonna say, so you said there's 10 guys kind of that are at the top. Can you tell us a little bit about? Can you tell us who the Royals aren't gonna get at least?
Well, so basically, the top 10 that's pretty much consensus is 8 college guys and 2 prep guys. So there's 2 guys that I think have basically a 0% chance the Royals getting, and that's Charlie Condon from Georgia and Travis Bazzana from Oregon State. Condon was the Golden Spikes winner this year, which is the award that goes to the best amateur college baseball player, or amateur player, I should say, in the United States. It usually goes to a college player because it would be kind of funny if they did give it to a high school player. But anyway, Condon has played like 5 different positions this year, including center field, but he's probably a third baseman, corner guy at the next level. He had some silly offense numbers this year. He's probably going to go top 3. Travis Bazzana, I think, will very likely go top 3 as well. He's a second baseman from Oregon State. He's much more of a finished product. What you see is kind of what you get, but he's like super polished hitter, can play up the middle, good pop, steal some base, etc. Those 2, I think, are almost certainly not going to get down to 6. Jack Caglione is another one that maybe will, but I tend to doubt it. Two-way guy, his nickname in college has been Jack Tawney for Florida. I think his days of pitching are probably over because even though he can get up to like 99 from the left side, has a pretty good changeup. There's very little command. It's an ugly delivery. So he's probably just going to hit, and he's limited to first base, but the dude can really freaking hit. I mean, he has more power than maybe anybody else in the class. Good first base defender, too. So I imagine some team's going to sign him and say, hey, you're done pitching. Go hit for us, and that's going to be that. So I think those top 3 are very likely not going to make it. JJ Weatherholt's another one that I'm not really sure of because coming into the year, a lot of people had Weatherholt as the number 1 prospect in this draft class. He's an infielder for West Virginia. This year was supposed to be a year where he was going to play shortstop and see if he can cut it there, but he was injured for about half of the season with a hamstring injury, and he's dealt with injuries throughout his college career. He's also a bit undersized, and so I'm thinking that combination of factors might knock him down the board a little bit, but in terms of his talent, I mean, it's an awesome hit tool. He's got plus power, great defense, even if it's just at second base. He's a super fascinating case because if JJ Weatherholt does somehow get that on a number 6, I think the Royals kind of have to go for it, but I don't know if he's going to be there. I could see him really fluctuating depending on, kind of a team's concerns with injuries. If I were to pick like one of the 3 or 4 guys I think the Royals are most likely to get, it's going to come down to either Braden Montgomery, Chase Burns, or Hagen Smith. So Braden Montgomery is an outfielder for Texas A&M. Right field profile. He kind of just has average speed, so probably not center, but he was a 2-way player at one point as well, and he's up to 99 on the mound. Cannon of an arm in the outfield, probably the best outfield arm in the entire draft class, and he can really hit. I mean, switch hitter. The left-handed swing is like maybe my favorite swing in the entire draft class. The right-handed swing isn't quite as good, but he could really hit from the left side. He was awesome for A&M this year. Hagen Smith and Chase Burns would be the pitchers if they want to go for one of those. Hagen Smith is the lefty from Arkansas. It's the right-handed pitcher from Wake Forest. I much prefer Chase Burns myself. He has not had a Tommy John surgery already, and I like his delivery more than Hagen Smith's, but they were both just absolutely dominant in college this year. And so it's hard to kind of delineate between them two. I think that Chase Burns is probably the better prospect, but I think some boards might have Hagen Smith above them. So those are the 3 guys. I think Nick Kurtz is another college guy that maybe they go for, Wake Forest first baseman. I don't really know with him. I feel like he's probably going to go a bit lower than the Royals are going to be picking at. And then Connor Griffin and Bryce Rainier are the prep players. I don't think they're going to go with a prep player this high. I only say that because they've been doing an alternating college player, prep player, college player, prep player every year since 2014. So I'm just going to assume they're going to continue doing that. Why not? Last year was a prep player. This year they're going to do a college player. I don't think there's any like actual pattern or anything here. I'm just going to assume it's going to keep going.
Okay. So if Weatherholt did fall to the Royals at 6 and they picked him, would you be excited about that?
I think I would be, yeah, because I think he offers a very high floor. He might have the best hit tool in the entire class. I think there is a chance he can play shortstop. I know he didn't really get the opportunity to prove it in college this year, but given a shot, I think he can. I mean, he's not like an exceptional athlete, but he's just a very skilled player. And so I know that can, maybe that sounds like just a repeat of Christian Colon, and maybe that's going to be the case, but I do value at least the hit tool and some amount of floor. And so I understand that injury history can be kind of scary, but if he's up there at 6, I think there's a pretty good chance the Royals will take him.
And you said you preferred Burns to Hagen Smith, right?
I do.
What about, and I forgot the outfielder's name already because college players named the other. Which of the three do you prefer?
I'm just partial to position players in general, unless it's a pitcher that's Paul Skeens, which nobody else is Paul Skeens, and so
not even Paul Skeens Jr.
Not even Paul Skeens Jr. is Paul Skeens Jr. So like, there's people trying to make the comp between Hagen Smith or between Chase Burns and Paul Skeens from last year, and it's still not there for me because even with what those guys did, just in terms of the on the field results, they don't have the physicality or the raw stuff that Paul Skeens does, or like the overall athleticism, and so that was something that Skeens had that made him so special as a prospect. There's not really a pitcher like that here. And so without a pitcher like that, I prefer the position player. And so I would lean Braden Montgomery if it was going to come down to that. But I'd be pretty satisfied with Chase Burns as well. Like I think there's a chance that Chase Burns goes like 4th or 5th and doesn't make it there anyway. But I think if we get to number 6 and Braden Montgomery, Chase Burns, and Hagen Smith are all still on the board, and then none of Condon, Bazana, and Weatherholt are, I think the Royals probably go Chase Burns. I don't really have any actual evidence there, but they haven't taken a college pitcher in quite some time. And they seem to like to, change things up quite frequently. Obviously, it's not entirely the same staff that it has been over the past decade, and so you can't necessarily trust the long-term trends. We haven't had that many drafts under J.J. Picollo specifically, and so we haven't really had enough time to really gauge like a larger sort of strategy they go for at the top. But just from what I've read and seen online, I can see Chase Burns or Braden Montgomery there. I think Hagen Smith is a bit less likely.
Okay, so Hagen Smith, mark it down, gonna be the Royals pick, and we can all be mad when Braden Montgomery and Chase Burns go 7-8, and they're playing in the big leagues next year, and Smith is on his way to The Hague for war crimes. Hagen makes me think of The Hague.
I will be shocked if Chase Burns goes later than like 7.
Okay. So Chase Burns goes 7, Braden Montgomery goes 8, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I can see that. In terms of actually delineating the rankings between them is just very difficult. That's the main reason why I'm saying I don't think the Royals are going to do some kind of underslot shenanigans. It's just because by the time you get down to that 40-ish range where the next 2 picks are going to be, I just don't know if there's anybody that's really worth trying to push that money down for.
Well, I mean, Greg, they're just going to pick Tommy White out of LSU at 6 overall, right? And then go underslot. No,
that would be a reach, but yeah, I guess they could do that. Like, I don't know, maybe they reached like a Christian Moore as well. He's Tennessee's second baseman, and he just went nuclear in the postseason, and so
he did.
That probably did push him up some draft boards. I mean, he's not like the greatest athlete and doesn't have the best swing or anything like that, but I mean, he performed at extremely high level in the SEC, so at some point the production has to matter.
Don't mind me. I'm just gonna fire up the Vance Honeycutt hype train again.
Don't get me started on 2022 for him to become the best player in college baseball. It just didn't happen because there's just way too much end zone swing and miss. But if you're trying to find the toolsiest player in the draft, it might be him. And so if this was like, if this was like the 2013 Royals, I'd be like, okay, yeah, they're taking Vance Honeycutt up there, just tools, let's go. But
Bubba Starling.
Yeah, it does seem like they've moved away from just the tools over everything else sort of approach. But if that were still the case, then Vance Honeycutt would be the guy because it's like, it's elite power. He was the best defensive player in all of college baseball, and so there is a floor from that at the very least. But there's just so much end zone whiff with him.
So Joey Gallo?
Not even Joey. He doesn't have Joey Gallo's power. He's a way better at least.
He can.
Joey played center for a while, didn't he?
There's a difference between playing center field and being able to play center field. Remember when they put Alex Gordon in center field? Remember when Bobby Wood Jr. center field? Remember that? Wasn't that fun?
That was a fun time.
I'm pretty
sure folks are still talking about moving Michael to center field. Because they thought about doing that last year to get him on the field, get that bat in the lineup.
Subset of Royals fans is just like, hey, fast infielder, move from the center field. Like, no, that's not how this sport works. What are you doing?
Well, while we're talking about how this sport does and doesn't work, probably the most interesting player in my mind in this draft pool, I can't even say his name. It's Harangelo. I can't even say his last name. I'm not even going to try.
Good attempt. Yeah, Gerangelo Sinji.
Thank you.
So Durangelo Sinji, he's a draft eligible sophomore switch pitcher from Mississippi State, undersized guy, 5'11", 200, but still gets up to 96 from the right side, more like 92 from the left. He is a way better pitcher from the right side, and so I imagine a team is going to take him and say, you are a right-handed pitcher now, but I hope they give him the opportunity to at least attempt the whole switch pitching thing, because he was really good this year. Like, he had to pitch in Mississippi State's starting rotation as a freshman, which he was not ready for, and so he got absolutely rocked. But this year, he was much better, especially in conference play. And so there's really something there. I hope a team will give him the chance to do the whole switch pitching thing, but I think more than likely he's just going to be a right-hander when it's all said and done.
Oh, it'd just be fun. It'd be fun to. It's cool to see the clips of him switching the glove like while he's standing on the mound.
Yeah, we love that.
We do. We love.
And did we ever? I know there was a switch pitcher that pitched for the A's for a little bit. Did we ever figure out what happens when a switch pitcher faces a switch hitter?
One of them has to declare which side they're going to use first, and I think it's the batter, but I don't know that for sure.
That just be. I think the world would collapse in on itself. I think Rob Manfred might have a slight aneurysm if he saw that. I think that's the only way that would go. Greg, don't say it.
The batter has to choose first.
No, Greg was going to say it. You said the batter has to
choose first. Apparently, what happened was they had a game where the switch pitcher faced a switch hitter, and they just kept swapping back and forth until the umpire was like, no, we have to actually play the game.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it happened in a minor league game, so they had to figure out how to handle that before he even got up to MLB.
Well, good. I'm glad that they figured it out at least. Thank you for finding that, Jeremy. Greg, any closing thoughts on the draft stuff? Like, is there anything else that Royals fans need to know or be concerned about?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's anything to really be concerned about. Like, if they go with anybody in that top 10 that I mentioned, I'm not really going to complain too much, just because it's really hard to delineate between all of these guys. It's a weird draft where it's just there isn't any obvious guys that really stand out in a meaningful way among that top 10. You know, it's like there isn't, you know, that shortstop or center fielder or catcher that's just absolutely amazing and is going to go on the top. And so it makes it more challenging to figure out. I'm very interested to see where they go with those next two picks, because there are some interesting guys in that kind of second tier of players, but it's so hard to delineate from. I'm looking at like Ryan Johnson from Dallas Baptist. He might be a first rounder, but he has like the most unusual mechanics I've ever seen, but he was awesome. And so I think that would be an interesting guy for them. There is another player named Michael Massey in this draft, so I think it would be really funny if the Royals decided to draft him. A right-handed pitcher from Wake Forest. The stuff is amazing. He was hurt this year for a decent chunk, and so wasn't pitching a whole lot, but when he did, he was pretty good. And so I think the Royals should draft the other Michael Massey, because it would be funny to have both those guys in your system at the same time.
It would be so confusing, to say the least. Jeremy, anything else on the draft right now while we're talking about it?
No, I've already written down that Hagen Smith is coming to Kansas City, and I get to be annoyed about it.
No, let's not be down on Hagen Smith. All right, let me gas him up a little bit. I mean, Hagen Smith, left-handed pitcher for Arkansas, upper 90s fastball. The slider is just absolutely disgusting. He throws it to hitters from both sides of the plate, so he's barely needed a third pitch, which he probably will once he gets into the majors. He has
this again.
He has a changeup. He has a changeup and a curveball. He just didn't really need them, and so he only used them sparingly. But early on in the season, he had a 17 strikeout game against Oregon State, and again, the numbers that he was putting up in SEC play were comparable to what Paul Skeens did last year. Arkansas was very close.
There's the Paul. Why are you burying the lead? There's Paul Skeens Jr.
Well,
it's just changed his name.
It's not the same, because, again, like, he's already had a Tommy John. He doesn't have the physicality and the athleticism of Paul Skeens. I mean, Paul Skeens was also a catcher before becoming a full-time pitcher in college. Like, Paul Skeens was a two-way guy for Air Force before he transferred to LSU.
Wow.
Hagen Smith has never been a two-way guy. And so he's a lefty again. I don't love the delivery, and so I can understand some concerns with that. But, yeah, he did the damn thing in the hardest conference in all of college baseball. And so at some point the results have to matter. And to some extent, he didn't have quite the numbers that Skeens did, because Arkansas was very careful with him. Like, they wouldn't let him go as deep into games consistently as Paul Skeens. Like, they basically never let him go over 100 pitches in a game.
Yeah, like that 17 strikeout performance you were talking about, Greg, that came on just 78 pitches. Like that was an uber efficient game from
But
him.
strikeouts are so inefficient, Jacob.
They are. Thank you, HUD. Appreciate that. Appreciate that insight there, Rex.
God, I love
Critical over the weekend was that strikeouts are efficient, by the way. In case you guys missed that one.
It is
hang on, you're telling me that all 30 teams weren't chasing inefficiency with their pitching strategy? What?
What?
It turns out.
I feel like they were onto something by pursuing strikeouts.
Eesh.
Goodness.
Have you had a chance to follow the minor leagues much this year, Greg?
No, I've been stretched thin with everything else that I follow. Now I'm really into tennis right now because of Wimbledon.
Okay.
No, I don't follow the minor leagues that much in general, honestly. Like I go college baseball, and then once that season ends, I just switch over to MLB.
I wanted to see if you had any takes about Gavin Cross and Ben Kudrna making it to the Futures game.
I'm glad that they did. I mean, Gavin Cross has been way better than he was last year. It seems like he's actually healthy. He's still striking out quite a bit, and so I have some concerns there. And I don't think he's even playing center field anymore, so that does cut down his value a little bit. But, I haven't sold my stock on him. I liked the pick when they made it in 2022. I still think he could be a good player. He's not going to be a superstar or anything, but I think he can be better than any outfielder currently on the Royals big league roster.
Even Hunter Renfroe?
I think he could even be better than Hunter Renfroe. Yeah, crazy concept.
Wow. All right, cool.
We'll take it. We love it. I will absolutely take that from Gavin Cross. And yeah, Ben Kudrna, he's like the story of why you should go under slot, because that's what the Royals did. They went under slot with Frank Mazzucato, and they got Ben Kudrna in their next pick. So, but he hasn't pitched above high A, so there's still a lot of baseball ahead of Ben Kudrna.
I'm at least a little bit surprised they picked a guy that hadn't even reached Double A yet for the Futures game.
Yeah, that was fairly surprising, I will say. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and get on out of here with our Royals reviews. You remember that, right?
What about the responses, the Q&A response?
My gosh,
got it.
See,
don't forget the Q&A responses, Jacob.
This is why I keep you around, Jeremy. Well, while I'm pulling it up, let me go ahead.
I'm a man of the people.
We love hearing from the people. Well, and it is kind of important because I think I told people in the Q&A, like, hey, we're gonna have Greg on. Actually, no, I just said if you have MLB draft questions, drop them here. So
smart. I could have ruined the whole intro thing that we did.
It would have, but that would be just typical me fucking it up. Dang it! There's our F-bomb.
Hello, explicit tag.
An hour.
I lasted a while at least. So hey, listen, while we're here yapping about the Q&A. The Q&A is available on Spotify for our Spotify listeners. So go ahead over to that platform, make your voice heard. We read off your Q&A responses in the following episode. I did ask, Jeremy, we were talking about the trade deadline a little bit and like different approaches to it. I asked trade now and risk overspending, or trade later and let the market unfold. 57% said now, 43% said later. So
quick, Greg, what's your vote?
I'm fine with going until later, especially because here you're probably trading for a reliever. Let me give those relievers another 2 weeks to see if they fall apart first.
All right.
Yeah.
Chris Bubich is here, so we're fine.
Exactly. Yeah, we had that reliever.
We're fine for a couple weeks.
My only deadline take really is Pete Fairbanks make it happen, assuming they raise your selling.
I like it. I like it.
I would like that a lot more than Jason Adam.
I'm good on Jason Adam. His name is Jason frickin' Adam. Like, no, thank you.
My problem with him, which I apparently I'm the only one who remembers this. He was the ringleader a couple of years ago when the Rays had their anti-pride. Since we've already cursed bullshit, when they tried to do the rainbow logos and they refused to wear the rainbow logo uniforms.
Jason Adam wouldn't wear the gay hat. Like, you're not the only one that remembers that. I just didn't feel like mentioning that in my recap as I was back about Jason Adam.
You're fine. It's just everybody else who's brought up Jason Adam. I'm like, no, thank you. And they're like, why? And I'm like, they're like, is it because the Royals gave up on him? I'm like, no, it's because
he sucks.
He's a jackass.
It's because he sucks.
The only reason why I remember Jason Adam is because the most recent MLB The Show I own is MLB The Show 19, and I fired up the Royals franchise, and he's still there, still on the 40-man roster.
Thank God.
As like a 57 overall or something like that. Just absolutely awful. Let's get to y'all's responses on Spotify. So I asked, which Royals prospect are you most excited about? Also, if you have MLB draft questions, drop them here. Royal Rupert says, we're going to party like it's 1999 when John Rave is called up to the majors. On the pitching side, it's Beckway all the way. Steve says, yeah, Blake Mitchell, 462 slugging and 859 OPS while striking out 31%. If he could put more balls in play, he could be an impact bat. There is concern with his catcher metrics. I would love to hear those metrics, Steve. Aaron Bailey says Mazzucato, but a quick breakdown of guys we could be targeting would be cool, which we did, Aaron. Thank you. And I always think you can't have too many pitchers. And then let's see here. We got Isom Benson saying Gavin Cross. Fistifer says, I'm most excited about Tyler Cropley. That's probably the most Fistifer response that we could get to that question. And then lastly, Christopher Palmer says, honestly, Blake Mitchell was skeptical about the pick, but he's doing good. Can the Royals realistically get either Jack Caglione or Chase Burns at their pick? I really want the Royals to draft one of them. And Greg, if we were putting a percentage on Chase Burns being available. Okay. All right. I like that.
Here's one more question I have for you, Greg. If you had the number 1 overall pick, who would you take?
I would go Condon, just because I know he doesn't play up the middle like Travis Bazzana does, but I think he gives the most offensive upside, and so I'm just drafting him for the bat. I'll stick him in left field even. I don't care. Stick him in left field, have at it, just go hit, man, because he definitely has a higher ceiling offensive than Bazzana. Bazzana is kind of like the high floor option, so I think Bazzana might go 1-1 because Cleveland is picking. They really like their short-levered, up-the-middle hitters, and so I think they could go Bazzana 1. But I would go Condon first overall.
Condon's got that. He's got the raw power that you want from a corner outfield type. Like, that's him and Jack are kind of the guys that stand out in this top 10 as having that raw power.
Play like a decent amount of center field this year. He is not a center fielder in pro ball, but the fact that he was able to do it in college at least tells me like there's a level of athleticism there that there isn't for a guy like Cags.
Gotcha. All right, good to know. All right, guys, anything else before we get on out of here? Our Royals reviews, obviously. So, Greg, you remember what these are, right? So it's been a while.
Yeah, I've done plenty of these.
This is old.
How many beers do we owe you reviewing?
Man, we owe him a lot.
Don't we? Yeah, I was having a beer this time. I was having a Cuba Libre, but I already finished it.
Nice. Greg, why don't you start us off, man?
Yeah, I'll start us off with a book that I'm almost done with now that was actually recommended, or at least I first heard about it, I believe, from our very own farmhand in the Royals Review comment section. And so I decided to pick this up after you mentioned it. And it is Crossings, How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of Our Planet by Ben Goldfarb. And so it is directly related to my day job in a pretty substantial way as a highway engineer, but it's exactly what it sounds like. It's about how our development and maintenance of roads is affecting just the environment around them. And so there's been a lot of chapters about how they've affected animal migration routes and how we can keep those migration routes active even with roads having to cut through them. It's been about noise pollution, the air pollution that surrounds roads, even the roadside wildlife that you get, because it turns out that can actually be a pretty important ecosystem in its own right. It's a very fascinating book, in my opinion, if you're into ecological kind of stuff. So would recommend. Yeah, it's a good read.
Okay.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it does, actually. Jeremy, what do you got?
So yesterday I watched for the first time over on Max Police Story, which is one of the early Jackie Chan films from 1985 when he was still, just working in Hong Kong. It was not a perfect movie by any means, but it had, if you're a Jackie Chan lover like I am, seeing kind of his early stuff and how it would grow from there. And even in 85, he was directing, choreographing, starring, and doing his own stunts in this movie. And they even had a blooper reel that they ran during the credits that showed the biggest stunt from the movie and how hurt he actually was, and how they had to use a stunt double to actually do a body double more than a stunt double to run after somebody from a distant camera angle for a second. after this jump he did. I love Jackie Chan. It was great to see kind of some of his early stuff for a little bit.
Okay, all right. I haven't even heard of that one. I'm also going to review a movie that I watched on Max this weekend, and it's not going to be a good review because I hadn't actually seen this one. It was Dwayne the Rock Johnson's San Andreas. I hadn't seen that one when it came out like back in 2012 or something like that because I watched Twister and I was like, man, I forgot how much just a good old fashioned disaster flick is. Like it's simple plot, and you just go watch it and you're done. I was like, okay, well, San Andreas. I mean, it's a newer one. It can't be that bad, right? And I went and watched it, and man, it is just peak cringe. The Rock, in a lead acting role, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of his, so maybe if you do like him, maybe you would like it. But the effects are solid. Some of the supporting cast isn't the best, and even for a disaster movie, there's a lot of like, well, wait, wasn't this supposed to affect that? And I don't want to spoil stuff, so go check it out on Max. I'm not a fan of it, but you might be. All right, guys. Anything else before we get out of here?
I just want to add that I feel like when he was still The Rock, Dwayne Johnson was actually a pretty good actor. But after a while, I feel like he really kind of just started taking just really safe roles and really boring roles and not doing anything with them and making a lot of like mediocre to bad movies. So I think you've got a point.
Greg, do you have any takes on Dwayne the Rock Johnson?
No, I really don't. I just wanted to mention real quick that Zach Hockey is currently in the Phillies system pitching in Double A.
He is.
To
Oh my
wrap something
gosh!
around from earlier.
Thank you. I was wrong. I thought he was in like the Patriot League or something like that. All right, let's go ahead and get on out of here, folks. If you're still listening, you know where to find us on social media. The best place to go and follow on social media is Royals Review. You could go to royalsreview.com. You can find them on Twitter. You can find them on Facebook. You can also find them on Threads if you're over there. Just go look up Royals Review. I'm Jake Milham. You already know Jeremy. Greg, thank you so much for joining us tonight. All of our links are down in the podcast description below if you want to follow along on social media. Thank you for joining us tonight, and until next time, go Royals!